my great pleasure this evening to introduce our speaker, Oscar A.
Oscar, alcoholic? This is strange. Thank you for allowing me to be of service in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous and you identify as an alcoholic, you're welcome to attend meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous and you don't identify yourself as an alcoholic, you're welcome to attend a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open meeting. But if you're not an alcoholic, you're an observer. If you're an alcoholic, you could become a participant. So if you're not, observe. Maybe you might learn something about alcoholism. I didn't come here as an alcoholic. It's my experience. All I'm going to do tonight is try to share with you my experience, my personal, practical experience, brought on by a lot of painful wrong turns, right? Because very few people I meet in Alcoholics Anonymous only drank a few drinks and ended up at a meeting going, I think that's going to be a problem. You know, we ride until the wheels fall off, right? And I've seen some of your wheels fall off, so I know that's true in this case. When I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, my sobriety date is August 9th, 1987, which means that I'm sober longer than a lot of people in this room tonight are even alive. And I never thought that would be possible. And that doesn't mean anything, really. That doesn't mean anything. If anything, the one thing that does mean is it does work. What I say tonight is not going to hold much water. It doesn't really matter what I say tonight. You could pay attention to me or look at your cell phone all night. It doesn't really matter to me. What I do speak so loudly that what I say doesn't hold any water. That's the truth. What you do speaks so loudly that I'm not listening to a thing you're saying. I watch people in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I learn so much from you. I learn what not to do. I learn what to do from members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I didn't know about life. I didn't know how to live life on life's terms. I didn't know how to live like everyone else seemed to know how to live. I didn't know how to get a job and hold a job, pay a bill, pay a rent, pay a tax. I mean, I was petrified when first time I ever had to pay taxes because I didn't know how, I was afraid that the worst case scenario was going to result in my messing up some form, some answer wrong. I mean, I just didn't know how to live. And I'd never practiced how to live without being responsible. I just never knew how to do that. I have to identify myself as an alcoholic. The whole purpose of what I'm going to share with you tonight is for the one purpose only, for the purpose of identification. My story is going to sound different to you than yours maybe. What I did, how I grew up, it might be different from yours. And if you want to focus on the differences, you're welcome to do that. But if you're sitting at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and you're suffering of any kind of alcoholism and you're looking for the solution in Alcoholics Anonymous, it was suggested to me to listen for the similarities. And hopefully what I'm going to speak to you from is the language of my heart. I'm in a lot of pain, to be perfectly honest with you. I've got to be honest with you. I'm in pain. A very important man died in my life 5 days ago. And I'm dressed in all black, not to look like Johnny Cash or any of that crap. I'm dressed in black in mourning. I'm in a lot of pain. I've cried for days. And the last thing I want to do is stand in front of you. Not because I don't want to carry the message, but because I'd rather just be at home and think. And left to my own devices, my choices are self-destructive, so I take a series of contrary actions. So I'm here tonight. That man was in my life for my entire sobriety. That man taught me everything that I have ever learned about being a gentleman, about being a father, about being a grandfather, about inviting Alcoholics Anonymous into my house. By his example, not by what he said. I watched what he did. And I was talking to my sponsor about it a lot these last couple of days. And, that man affected a lot of people. And a lot of people didn't know him. They just heard him share at meetings or met him once or twice. Sponsor and I, we were talking about that, and we were like, we were in his pocket. I buried his dog in his backyard. I stood in front of his house when people hated him. Well, My sponsor asked me to stand in front of his house because somebody wanted to kill him a lot, and I enjoyed that, but that's part of my story. Don't try to make me happy. I used to drink alcohol. I drank alcohol chiefly for the effect produced by it. I didn't drink for the taste. I didn't drink because of the aroma. You know, I might have done that like you guys do, you know, but that was a suicide. You know, I was doing a suicide, mixed it all together, went, nice little wave there, gone, you know. I'm a selfish bastard. I'll show up to a party, and I will bring the cheapest booze I could bring and try to look like I'm giving it out. You know, hey, you guys want some Schaefer beer? Because I knew somebody there had Mickey's. I knew somebody else there had some vodka. I knew somebody else had some Jack Daniels. I knew somebody else had some Seagram 7. I knew somebody else had some Crown Royale. And that, you know, the fancy stuff coming out of, you know, purple bags and stuff. I thought that was, you know, that was fancy. I lost a relationship over Crown Royale once. I'm no different than a lot of people, and I'm terminally unique in my own head. I grew up in a normal neighborhood. We good, John? I grew up in a normal neighborhood. I grew up skateboarding, surfing, listening to punk rock, and throwing rocks. And all those are problems other than alcoholism, really, so I'm not going to bring them up into the meeting. But that's how I grew up. I grew up in Venice, Santa Monica, West LA, and there wasn't a BMW in the neighborhood. When I first saw the first BMW, I think I was already 20 years sober, and I remember thinking, there goes the neighborhood. Now all the rich people are going to move in. There goes all the fun we were having. But I grew up in a time, you know, in the late 70s, not realizing what a great experience we were having. It seemed kind of traumatic at the time, to be perfectly honest with you. We had a water crisis going on in Southern California, and everyone was forced to empty their pools out. And we were a bunch of kids skateboarding, and so we started hopping fences and skateboarding in their pools and throwing rocks. And my job as a little boy was to throw rocks, because the better kids that skated better were the ones that were skating first. And when they were done, we'd jump in and do it again. And if we didn't jump into it, we would never get a chance. And I learned early in life that you had to compete with everyone. And I hate competition. I hate competition. I hate playing in team sports. I am not a baseball player with you. I'm not a softball player. I'm not any player, you know. I like skateboarding and surfing and throwing rocks because we're an individual sport. I don't have to do it with anybody else. Matter of fact, the less of you around me, the better my day is in those events. I liked being alone. So I started partying, you know. People in my neighborhood were getting wasted, you know. I thought, why not, you know. When I was an 8-year-old little boy, I came out of my house and I stepped over a heroin addict, and he was wasted in front of my house. He was nodding out. And he was wearing, you know, he was a vested motorcycle guy, right? And I knew I wasn't going to do heroin, because I looked at that guy and I thought, I could pick his pockets right now. I could take all his money because he nodded out. So the only people that I saw that were doing heroin were all these like disgusting bikers. And I grew up in a neighborhood full of disgusting bikers and organized youths in groups wearing certain colors. And it was a blue neighborhood apparently, because nobody wore anything but that. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know the outside world. We didn't have the internet. You know, we didn't have cable TV. We had you get up, turn the channel a couple times with the knob, and you only get the Wild World of Kingdom or whatever, and you didn't get a lot of outside information coming in. And first time I was riding a stolen bike out of my neighborhood, I saw different things, and I was shocked, because I didn't think the world even existed that way. You know, I'd never left my neighborhood, and I saw different things, and I was shocked. But I have this disease. It's a controversial thing. I need to go. I need to get out of here. I need to leave. That's at the core of who I am inside. And when I was a little boy, the minute I learned how to climb a fence, I hopped over to the other side. And then I hopped the other side. And then I took things from somebody's property and I moved them to another person's property. I never thought that that was stealing. Sometimes they would come back with me if I needed them or wanted them. Sometimes they would just stay in somebody else's property. And I lived in my own head. I read Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer, and I pretended that the LA River was my Mississippi. I walked around the homeless. I called them hobos because the book was talking about hobos, and I tried to pretend that I was in that world. I didn't live in reality. I didn't see well. When I got sober, I realized that I needed seeing glasses, because everybody looked like a blur, and I thought it was just the way the world was. I didn't know that people could see clearly. I learned that taking some newcomer to a meeting when I found out I can't see the signs that they can see. I never asked people what they could see. I was so self-obsessed, I never bothered to ask what does the world look like to you? I never asked. I started getting wasted. I started drinking. I enjoyed it. I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to grow old. I never thought I would ever get to 18. I figured I would die high. Then I figured I would die with a bullet in the back of my head in a gutter in Penmar Park. And so I bought a one-way ticket and I went off to France. And I went off and served in their military for a while. I was Sergeant Airborne, and I drank some more, I was scared by then. I was older by then. And I was in charge of guys by then. And so when you're in charge of guys and you become some sort of demigod, you ask people to do things for you that you shouldn't be asking them. Like, if you don't want to do guard duty between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m., get me a bottle of wine. That's the only way you're going to get any sleep. So you're going to get a bottle of wine. Because I'm drunk and you're asleep. And so our perimeter is compromised almost every night. And I'm deployed. The first deployment I ever did was in Lebanon after the bombings of Beirut. And I'm scared, right? I'm a kid. I'm like 18 years old. What do I know what I'm doing? And we spent 6 months out in the desert out there, and I was scared, and I had issues, and I had drama, and I had trauma, and I had all those things, right? So I come back, and I drink some more, and then they send us off to some place in Ethiopia, and then there's famines going on. People are not eating, and I watch people die in front of me over and over and over. Babies and moms and babies. And I'm just drinking. I don't really want to know what's going on in the world. I know the world sucks. When I come home, my sister's getting married. My sister's never had a boyfriend. My brother was older than me, and he had gone off to join the U.S. Navy, and I'd gone off to France and done my paratrooping. And she was getting married, and I wanted to come home, and I wanted to kill this guy who was going to marry my sister. He was the only person that ever dated my sister, okay? He's the only guy that was ever nice to her. He offered to marry her. He was a gentleman, but I had a disease of perception that was not based on reality, and I wanted to come home because I thought for some reason I was going to hurt him because he had defamed my family name, which he had not. No one in my life had told me that. I was the only one with that belief system in my head. Not anyone in my family was even He's a nice guy. John's a nice guy. John's a nice guy. He's going to marry your sister. Leave him alone. And before I got home, I got to mention this. I'm living in an Arabic neighborhood in Pigalle in Paris, right? And I'm drinking every night. And the Algerian liquor store is where I got my booze. At this time, I was getting I don't know if you ever did this at a liquor store, but you take the price tag off of the liquor, and you put it on the register, and you get credit for the week. And at the end of the week, you pay up your credit. That's the neighborhood I lived in. They gave me credit for the whole week, so I drank what I thought I could afford. And at the end of the week, I would pay up my debt like a bar tab because I was still under 21. And I'm thinking, this is okay. I think this is normal. And I'm carrying weapons, and I'm wandering around Paris, and I'm drunk. And I met some drunken people with me. I met a girl from Copenhagen, Denmark. And she was a drunk, too, I think. And I can't take her inventory. I don't know if she is an alcoholic or not. But she was drunk before I get off, come back home, and she was already wasted, passed out on my front porch, on my front doorway, and I was pissed because she was already there. And I don't know if you've ever drank with somebody who drinks faster or before you, and it really bothers me, because I want to get there first, and then I don't care what you're doing, but if you're already wasted now, I got to catch up. So now I'm getting wasted, and there's an Arabic neighborhood, and I just come back from Lebanon, and I've got issues, and I have trauma, and I got drama, and I'm reacting, and I'm acting out, and I'm pulling guns on people in the middle of the street in Paris, and I'm wasted. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's perfectly okay. And I'm walking through the streets of Paris with some drunken paratrooper on my shoulder who's passed out, two drunken Danish girls and a gun in my hand, and the police are like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Just leave me alone." I don't know what I'm thinking. I got drunk with her. We started wandering around the country. I lost her somewhere, maybe Madrid. I don't know. I lost her. And then I don't know what happened to her, but I decided what I was going to do. I'm going to buy another one-way ticket. And I bought a one-way ticket, and I went to Mexico City. And I flew there. This is being recorded, right? Is this being recorded? Yes. Okay, then I will not tell you what I flew with. I don't know what the statute of limitations are. But I flew with things that I shouldn't fly with in a time when I was okay, that nobody checked your stuff. I left a war zone, remember, just put the two together. So I flew with items that I thought were good for me in paranoia times, and I flew to a different country, and then I wandered to another country, and then I just ran. I ran. You know, I have 3 nationalities before I got sober. I've lived in different countries. I've traveled the world. I've run away from myself. I was putting a finger on Los Angeles on a globe back when we had globes instead of maps on Google Maps. We had a globe, and I put my finger on L.A., and I put my other finger on the other side of the earth, and I went as far as I could to get to that point. It's actually in the Indian Ocean. I couldn't get to that. The closest I could get to that is a little island called Reunion, La Union, and they speak Creole there. They go, I learned their language. I speak a bunch of languages because I got the gift of gab. I can wander. I can pretend to be something else. I can mix in with somebody else. I can adapt to something else. I can adapt. I can overcome. I'm a runner. I move. I shoot, and I communicate poorly. And it didn't change a thing. I couldn't get rid of myself. Everywhere I went, there I was. I'm a geographic major. That's what I am. I run and I run and I run. And I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because I was running from anything. It was an accident. I came here as a result of these events. One, I tried to stop drinking because I realized I was losing work. I was losing my job. My boss was telling me if I'd come home from this service and I had this girl come over to my house. And the girl from Copenhagen, Denmark, had somehow family in Los Angeles and flew out. She was okay, so imagine this. She finds me in L.A. I'm drunk. And I move her into my dad's van in our driveway in suburbia now. My parents had moved out of Venice and moved into a nice neighborhood, Burbank, and it's a boring place, you know, super middle class, super quiet after 10 p.m. kind of a neighborhood. And I've got her living in this van, a 1976 Chevy van. I'm living in the van. My parents don't want me in their house. I don't want to live on the street. Our stalemate is my dad's van in the driveway. What an embarrassment to my family that I am. Imagine your child living in that van in front of all your neighbors, you know. And we're drinking and we're just drunk. And one day I come back from one of my little visits on a run, and she had drank my Crown Royale. That was a gift to me. And I was so upset that I asked her to leave, and I asked her to leave in a very negative way, and I asked her to leave in a very callous, selfish, self-centered way. I didn't have any concern about her safety or well-being. I just asked her to leave and get out of my life, and that was the last I saw from her. You know, that was cruel. I treated people like that all the time. You know, if I can't use you, if I can't abuse you, I don't need you. And I was hitting bottom, and I didn't know I was hitting bottom, you know, and then I hit somebody on accident, and I had to call the cops on myself. And the cops told me to go lay low. I hid in a crack house in Pacoima because I don't do crack, so I figured it was safe to hang out at a crack house because I'm not doing it. You know, and crack house is full of crackheads, and they're not paying attention to me. Cops don't go to crack houses. That's why crackheads hang out there. So that was my logic, right? And I go to this crack house, and I'm hanging out, and I got this chick named Michelle with me. And somebody offered her something. She said, no, I'm 90 days sober, and I was shocked. I can't believe I just brought a 90-day newcomer to a crack house. What kind of a person am I? I'd heard about you. People like you had tried to help me before. You had tried to carry the message to me, but I was too young. I wasn't done. I'm not old. I'm a kid. Leave me the F alone. I know what I'm doing. I don't have a problem. You've got a problem. You're old. I don't have a problem. I'm just trying to get high. I'm just trying to get drunk. I'm just trying to leave me alone. Get off my back. Leave me alone. But I remembered when she said she had 90 days. That you guys had this meeting. Like, if you remembered Safe Harbor when you really want to get sober one day, and you come back here just because somebody reminded you about Safe Harbor and it's the only place you knew, that's what I found, a place in Burbank called the Angelino Club. And I pulled up in my 1967 Datsun 610, and if you don't know what those things look like, they look like Mr. Magoo cars, and it was 8 shades of orange. They don't have alcoholic cars anymore. Like, they're just full of white vans now. But back then, you had alcoholic cars. You know, now you got to wait for the white van to show. Oh, there's the alcoholic van. There's not the. Back then, you drove your own beat-up junk. You know, the lemon you shouldn't have bought. And, I'm the sucker at that moment, and I'm driving this orange vehicle with 8 shades of orange. I had driven with the e-brake on, so I had destroyed the brakes. I had no brakes. And there are people that can attest to this, because I just spoke to somebody about this morning. He said, I remember when you had 3 or 4 people in your car only because you needed everybody to open the door and stick their feet out like the Flintstones and stop the car. And I forgot all about that, but that's what I did. I'm a selfish, self-centered, out-of-my-mind alcoholic. And what I'm doing, I'm driving without insurance. I'm driving without registration. I'm just running and gunning. I make my own rules. And I remember one time, I don't want to get a job because I really can't get a job, but I'm not going to tell you that, so I laugh it off like, I don't need a job. Jobs for a bunch of establishment wusses and blah, 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 right? So I'm driving. I come off of an off-ramp, and an off-ramp in a city, sometimes they come downhill first, and then there's a stop sign or a red light, right? And I don't know how to stop the vehicle because not enough people in my vehicle can get their feet out in time, and I blam into the back of a Mercedes-Benz, right? What are you going to do? I don't get out and write my name and my number and, do the right thing, and I would like to pay you back. No, I get out freaked out. Everybody jump out. We got to freak this fool out. We jump out. We get as crazy as we can. We're going to kill you if you don't leave. And the dude leaves. I'm like, ha! We're out of this one, And that's how I live my life. That's the kind of alcoholic I am. That's what I came to you with. And so I showed up at that parking lot at that AA meeting in a 67 Datsun 610 with 8 shades of orange. It had the trunk smashed in right in the back, and it had a padlock holding the trunk from popping open, and it had a sticker on the back window. Like, I saw a car out here trying to tell us all kinds of news. I had to read some of it. I didn't understand any of it. But mine was even more elaborate. Mine said, "Don't laugh. Your daughter may be in this car." That's the kind of alcoholic I came to you with. And I'm sitting in the parking lot, not coming into the meeting. I just told that girl that I was with, listen, they're going to ask you, you're going to get a sponsor in there, but you got to get the right sponsor. You got to get the kind of sponsor that's going to let you date me. If they're going to tell you all about people like me, they're going to say, don't date in your first year. Don't listen to them. Get the kind of sponsor that tells you, I can't tell you who to date. Get one of them. Those are the ones you want. I'll be in the car. Make sure you get the right kind. And I'm drinking Seagram 7 in my car. And, Old English 800, 7 and 8, that's my drink of choice at the end of my days. And I don't come into the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous because I do not identify as an alcoholic. You know what I identify with? I have a world of problems. Alcohol is just one of them. I've got so many problems. Alcohol is just one of them. And if you guys find out that I have problems other than alcoholism, like I've got emotional problems, mental problems, your problem, issues, drama, trauma, all kinds of problems. I got thinking problems. I got feeling problems. I got living problems. I got death problems. I got all kinds of problems. Irresponsibility, slack. I'm a slacker. I got a lot of problems. And if you found out that I wasn't just an alcoholic, you wouldn't want me to stay. You're like, you tell me, this is my view of it, I thought you would tell me to leave. I thought you were going to tell me this is just for alcoholics. You can have no other problems other than alcoholism. That's what I thought, because I have a disease of perception. Plus, I've never looked at what you guys really had to offer. I read the steps with a drunken mind, so you're not getting anything out of that, But I was out of options. I didn't know what to do. And at the time, I was sitting in my car trying to formulate a plan. My plan was, I'm going to China, and I'm going to become a Chinese rice farmer. I'm going to wear one of those hats. You won't see that I don't look Chinese. I have blue eyes right now, so you can't tell. If I'm a Chinese guy with the big hat and I'm going to be in a rice farm, that's my penance for the crap I've done in my life. I'm not going to get caught by the cops because the word's out, and I'm in trouble, and the heat is on. I'm laying low. I got to bone out. I'm a runner. I've already done it a few times. My passport, I love watching a new country stamp on that thing. That's what I do. So I come into, I don't know how I'm going to do this because I'm unemployable as a result of not being able to stop drinking. I've tried to stop drinking, and I can't stop drinking. My boss told me, if you drink at work, you're fired. I get it. I get it. I won't drink at work, I promise. Somebody shows up with free alcohol. Does that count? I mean, it's free, right? And so I'm drinking free alcohol. I mean, that doesn't count. You shouldn't judge me for that. And I'm drinking free alcohol, but I know the trick. Some gum. If I eat some gum, you won't know that I'm drunk. And, of course, I got fired because I'm drunk, because I don't know how I behave when I'm drunk. I'm like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I can't maintain. Non-alcoholics, I used to hate them because they can maintain. They look like they're mellow, And I can't do that. I cannot predict what I'm going to do, how I'm going to act. I can't predict how I'm going to treat other people or how I'm going to treat myself. I don't know if I'm going to do self-harm or your harm. I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm sitting in that car trying to figure out how to get out of here, but I can't figure out how to make enough money to buy that ticket because that's all I need is just a ticket. Who can I con? And I was out of answers. My scorecard read 0 at that moment. I had no friendly direction. That's how I found out that I had hit bottom. So I had nowhere else to go to. I had no one to con. I couldn't live anywhere else. I was out. And then the guy that came out of the meeting during the coffee break was a guy named Joe Gomez. He had told me I could tell you his last name. He's dead now. Joe Gomez had 19 years clean and sober. He was one of the founding members of Narcotics Anonymous in Los Angeles in the late 50s, early 60s. And him and a few other people, a guy named Frank T. and a guy named Danny T. and Frank V. had tried to carry the message to me. But I was too young back then. And I didn't want to hear it. And those people I remember they had taken me to that meeting. That's the only reason I knew about the Burbank Angelino Club. And I don't remember anything else about any other meeting because I just remembered that. You know, I'm warped in the head at this point, right? I'm like out of my mind. So when I saw Joe come out of that meeting during the coffee break, I got out of my car, walked up to Joe with this intention. I was going to say, Joe, how can I raise enough money to go to China to become a rice farmer? That was my intention. And when I walked up to him, what came out of my mouth wasn't what I expected. I said, I don't know what I'm doing, Joe, and I can't get off this merry-go-round I'm on. And he looked at me with passion, with compassion, and he said, Oscar, it's good to see you. Just come inside and get a seat. Have a seat. And the main speaker that day, it was a daytime meeting. The main speaker that day was a member of a punk rock band that everyone knows of. I'm not going to say it because it's nobody's business. I didn't check with the dude to see if it was okay. So it was some dude from a punk rock band. So fortunately for me, I could understand this guy, you know, because he was singing the only song I knew, punk rock. I understood that. That's all I knew. Everyone laughed in identification, and I didn't understand why you were laughing. I thought, nothing funny anymore. It's over. This is sad. I'm at an AA meeting. This sucks. And, you know, I was afraid to tell you anything about me because I figured if you found out who and what I really was, you would not allow me in your meetings. So I came to AA originally in the beginning as an observer. I went to open AA meetings to observe you. I didn't know what to identify myself as because I didn't know who and what I really was. And I got a resentment when I got 30 days. I remember some lady upset me when I sat down after I got my 30-day chip. And you're supposed to be nice to me and say, congratulations, good job, you know, all those nice things you're supposed to say to the guy with 30 days. So this lady looks at me and she goes, don't talk to me, you're wasted. That hurt my feelings. I'm not wasted, I got 30 days. Now imagine what I must have looked like at 30 days to be confused for wasted. I was out of my mind. I mean, I was out of my mind. People used to pray for me after they go to the meeting. Spots, I got to talk to you about that guy, Oscar. Pray for him for 2 weeks. You know, I did a lot of that to people. I made a lot of people pray for me, and it worked for me. I learned in the early sobriety that it was better to give a resentment than to get a resentment. So I gave a lot of resentments, not on purpose, but because I didn't know how to live life on life's terms. And that lady hurt my feelings. That was my first resentment I had received. I didn't know how to handle a resentment. I knew how to give them, but I didn't know how to take them. And I was out of my mind. And I didn't think you guys stayed sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought you guys took turns coming in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. You're saying nice things to each other because, you know, Kevin is your sponsor right now, but Kevin's going to go out and Eric's going to become your sponsor when you come back. And then Eric's going to go out, you know, and Will's going to be the sponsor, and everybody's nice. And then eventually John's going to get it, and he's going to become somebody's sponsor. And you guys were only nice to each other because you kept coming in and out. I did not imagine that any of you had stayed sober. I could not imagine how that was even possible. 30 days was like better than any medal I'd ever learned. So I got a resentment. And what do you do with a resentment? You know, they say it's the #1 offender. Well, I'll tell you what I did. I decided I was going to outlast her. That's what I was going to do. I'm going to do everything that I hear at meetings to do so that I could stay sober just a little longer than her, waiting for her to drink, because I knew that you would eventually drink, because I didn't know people stayed. So I figured if I'm going to wait for her to drink, I'm going to get the mean or the most advanced sponsor, you know, the hardcore, the super-duper paratrooper AA guy, not the, you know, gear in the rear supply guy, AA guy. I wanted a special ops sponsor. I came from a special ops world. I'm special ops crazy. My head is that way. And so I thought in AA I tried to transfer it into Alcoholics Anonymous. I was going to get the most active member in Alcoholics Anonymous that I could find. The guy who showed up first to the meeting would qualify for that. The guy who stayed last for the meeting would qualify for that, And the reason I was going to get that guy was so I could stay sober longer, so I could watch her drink. I hope she drank. And if she drank, I hope she died. And if she died, I was hoping they'd be there for her when they buried her, and I'd piss on her grave. And that's the only reason I looked for a sponsor. Nobody told me to get a sponsor. I got a sponsor so I could outlast my resentment. And in the process, something strange happened. I got a guy. He was the last guy to leave a meeting where everybody shook each other's hands. I thought he was the most active AA guy in the world. I asked him to be my sponsor. And he said, sure, kid. Like, kid, you're my age. You're only 2.5 years sober. I mean, you look like John Elway. I mean, I hate you. I hate you. Hate you. You look like he was raised behind a white picket fence, like he had never had the kind of life I lived, like he had never done the kind of things I'd done. I judged his outsides by my insides. I did that a lot in my early sobriety. And I asked him to be my sponsor, and I did not realize that the only reason he was the last guy to leave that meeting was because he was in charge of cleanup, and he had to lock the door behind everyone. He wasn't the most active. He was just another member of Alcoholics Anonymous with a commitment. He stayed my sponsor. He told me to get a big book, read it from front cover to back cover. We'll go through the steps in order, slowly and surely. And he tried to share his experience with me, his strength and his hope. And I was the first person that he had permanently sponsored, and I felt sorry for him, kind of, like this poor guy. No one stuck around for this guy. I'm going to be a nice guy, I'm going to help him out. I'm just going to do it, And plus, the truth is, after I asked him to be my sponsor, I went in the men's restroom at that meeting. And I made a commitment to myself that I was going to do whatever he asked me to do unless it was illegal or immoral. And I didn't really have very good morals, and I didn't really always follow the rules. And so I got him as a sponsor. I turned a year sober on accident. I was going to meetings early. I would stay late. I would go to coffee. I would talk bad about all the old-timers, how mean they were back in those days. They'd call us names like Buddy and Pal and, put money in the basket, you frickin' taker, because the basket would go by and I didn't bring any cash. What a loser I am, right? I didn't think about where I was going. I'm going to an AA meeting. They're going to pass a basket. I should probably prepare. You guys are bringing masks to meetings. You're preparing. You know what I mean? And I couldn't even bring any money because I'm a selfish bastard. I'm just thinking about myself. So he told me in front of everybody, really out loud, he said, bring a penny. Put a penny in the basket. Start with something. And we don't need your money. It's not about that. It's for me to learn how to take a different action, contrary to how I think and feel. I got a year on accident by going to a lot of meetings, calling my sponsor every day. Got some loser to stay on my couch I didn't like. He was 1 month less time than me. I hated him. He did a lot of cocaine, and he was from Cuba, and I didn't like him. He always said the word booyah, like it meant something. I don't know what the hell. Booyah, everything. And I was like, shut up. Call my sponsor with resentments. You got to pray for him for 2 weeks. I'm like, I don't like this guy. He goes, just keep him on your couch. He needs a job. Let him get a job. So we started putting people on our couches back then. That's what we did when we were new. Newcomers would come to the meeting. They had all their life savings in a black plastic bag. And then one of us losers would take them over to our house for 3 nights. They would stay on our couch. They would go get a job. They'd have a sponsor. They'd go to the meetings, and people did it. Then they'd get themselves an apartment. They would do it again, and that's what we did back then, where I got sober. I learned a lot about life in Alcoholics Anonymous. I learned a lot about life. I learned more about life after I turned a year sober than in my first year. In my first year, I came out of the fog, like Chris over there in the back. I watched him come out of the fog in his first year. There's no way, any more than he could make it, that I could make it. And somehow, you could have. 37 people bet against me in my first year that I wouldn't make it. I know that because I was unpacking my father's belongings. My father had passed away in March. He died of a heart attack this year, the beginning of Corona, and I couldn't go back there until the end of May. And as I'm packing the last of his boxes, I found all of my one-year birthday cards, my chips, letters that I had gotten from Bosnia. He had kept everything that mattered to him for me. That's the kind of son I'd become. So 37 people bet against me. That's what I found out of reading all these letters. Like, oh my God, I've made a lot of people lose money. I bet a penny on people. I don't bet a buck. They were betting dollars. That's stupid. So After I turned a year, I got uritis. If you don't know what uritis is, it's when you think you know better than your sponsor and you don't need to run anything else by him anymore, and you got this, and I'm not calling every day. And now I'm in a relationship. I don't need to talk to you about it. I'm a grown-ass man. If I tell you something, you're going to put the brakes on my game, and I got game. Leave me alone. So that's called uritis. And I had uritis, and then I had to get a different sponsor because my sponsor was telling me, you're not talking to me, you're not calling me, you're not using me. And so I had to get another sponsor. I'll show you. I'll get your sponsor. You're going to be my AA brother. We're just going to be equals. The highest you ever get in AA is a trusted and experienced servant. We don't have leaders. Nobody governs. I mean, I thought it meant something. You're my AA brother now. You're not my sponsor anymore. You know, his sponsor tried to help me, but his sponsor had alcoholism too, and his sponsor got a bad back, started taking pain medications, drank, almost 12 years sober with a bad back. Drank, and 9 months later, he died of alcoholism. I watched him slowly die of alcoholism. And everything I believed in life, I believed that this man could do no wrong. He was my sponsor's sponsor. He was now my sponsor. How could he drink? The old man was his sponsor, you know. There is no way he could drink. And he drank, and then he died. And I gave up on AA. I gave up on AA. That's what I did. And I won't say what I did because it's being recorded and I don't know what the statute of limitations are. But I drove across the country maybe. And maybe I had something with me and maybe I was looking for trouble maybe. I'm not saying I did, but I might have, and it might be video of it. And I was looking for trouble because I felt terrible on the inside. My only hope is gone. And I'm 5 years sober. I don't know what to do. I re-enlisted in the U.S. military this time to make living amends because I couldn't go back and be a good example. I couldn't go back to France and find these people. They changed their names. They got different nationalities. It's just not working. And so I decided to make sort of a living amends with my sponsor's help. And I went back in the U.S. Army Airborne as a special ops super duper paratrooper because all I know is to be a paratrooper. I don't understand anything about not being a paratrooper. And I start making amends and he drinks. And I don't know what to do. And I'm out of my mind again. For the first time in 5 years, I'm out of my mind. And you can't tell people that because you got 5 years. You're supposed to have it together at 5, right? You're supposed to be somewhere at 5 years sober. I'm supposed to be happy and joyous and free at this point. And yet I'm in turmoil. I have lost hope. And so I drove across the country for about a month looking for trouble. I zigzagged the United States, doing 38 states. I looked for places all over the country that sold single cigarettes in liquor stores. And I got out of my vehicle and I walked the neighborhoods because I wanted to find relief. And the only relief I knew wasn't going to be in the bottle because I knew that wouldn't work for me. But I thought if I could make somebody else feel on their outside how I felt on the inside, then I would find relief. And that's what I was looking for. I had no options. And I'm out of my mind. I had lost touch with the second step where I'd come to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. And to be perfectly honest, I learned a valuable lesson as a result of that. Sometimes we must hit our heads against the wall. And I am honest about hitting my head against the wall because it's not something you just learn and all of a sudden you graduate. I learned that my real reliance had to be on a power greater than myself. No human was that important that I had to depend solely on that person. Humans will let me down. There isn't one person in this room who's ever going to rise above human. Every character defect, including myself, on my best day, the best I've become is human. And I learned that terrible, painful truth. I had to come to believe that a power greater than myself would really restore me to sanity, to learn how to take intuitive thoughts and actions to heart and act better than I felt because it was coming from a power greater than myself, not from me. I learned about anonymity, that it wasn't about the messenger. It was about the message of hope. I am an example of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you're watching this example at every meeting I attend. And if I'm not a good example, that's what you're watching, a poor example of a good example of a poor example. So it behooves me to try to be the best example I can. It helps me. It might help somebody I don't even know. So I learned how to carry the message. I went to this group that my grand sponsor formed back in 1960 started. I went to the Pacific Group. I was a Pacific Group member for a long time. And the old man was near and dear to me. He was my sponsor the whole time. It's always been that way. And he invited me to his house every Saturday, sometimes in the middle of the night, like I said earlier. I'd come over and have coffee on his kitchen table with his wife and kids and other loser AAs that would come and hang out in Brown Nose. When his dog died, I was asked to bury his dog in the backyard. I took a bad action. There was a time in my life when I didn't know how not to put hands on people. I didn't know how not to do that. And I was sober a while. You know, you're supposed to know things at 5 or 6 years. Well, think about this, you know. I didn't know how not to do that, you know. And I didn't know how to, I couldn't figure out how not to do that. I would allow people to push my buttons until I reacted. I didn't know how to take those contrary actions. So my sponsor would say, don't put hands on people. And I would put my hands up like this. And then I'd headbutt somebody. And then, you know, because I was like, sponsor, I didn't touch him. I didn't put my hands on him. You know, and one time I knocked out some dude at the yard where the old timers served the volleyball court, and I was yelling. And I felt like I'd sacrileged holy ground, like I'd spilt loser blood where the old timers served the ball. I felt like I'd done something terrible, not just the fact that that dude got hurt, because I felt bad about that too, but I felt like I'd done something even worse. And I went to somebody at the cloth, and I talked to him. I said, I don't want to go back to the meeting tonight because nobody liked that guy at the time, and they were all going to justify what I did was right. You did the right thing because that nobody liked him, and it was wrong. It was wrong at every level, and I needed to learn not to do that kind of stuff. And it wasn't always happening, but once is too many times for me. The obsession kicks in for me. It's a problem other than alcoholism that I have. And I had to learn how to apply these 12 steps so that I can learn to be happy inside, and I had to learn how to be joyous inside, and I learned how to be free from the bondage of self. That's what the freedom is from. The freedom isn't like I'm out of jail. The freedom is from the bondage of my self-constructed prison. I create listening to my bright ideas. And what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous by taking these steps perfectly and imperfectly and sometimes begrudgingly, what I learned from taking these steps and taking other people through these steps is I see myself in you each time I try to carry the message of hope. I've trusted God will restore me to sanity. I only ask for two things. What's your will for me, God? And give me the power to carry it out. I became a good NCO over at Fort Bragg. I deployed again sober. I turned 9 years sober in Bosnia. I spent the whole year without AA meetings because there was a war-torn country that I was living in. There wasn't AA meetings. They didn't have rehabs. They had no white bands. The Salvation Army had only people starving to death, and they were looking for food. The Salvation Army was only delivering food in the form of wheat bags and sugar bags. I mean, it was like that. You know what I mean? No AA. My home group, the Pacific group, was sending me letters. That was my AA. In the big book, it says we'd send our troops off to war, and they would fare better than most safe at home, with less emotional hangovers than those of us safe at home. And that is my experience. I learned in Bosnia how to apply these steps in life, and learned how to live comfortably with a lot of unresolved problems. The things that I saw there were no better than the things I saw before. You know, I think my record is 168 dead bodies in one day. That's not me doing it, just what I found. Okay? But that smells. And I learned how to be a good example of Alcoholics Anonymous in spite of what was going on around me. I tried to carry the message of hope. Sometimes the best I could do was be the designated driver to all the drunken soldiers with me. You know, sometimes the best I could do was go into the snowbank and pull some dude out half naked drinking Slipovich, you know. Sometimes the best I could do was read a letter that some newcomer sent me, you know, and write another letter back. I have some of those letters that I found that my dad's passing. Sometimes the best I could do was just try to figure out a way to get a hold of my sponsor. I see people all the time saying I haven't talked to my sponsor. Why? Because I'm not allowed to use the phone. Really? You're on the phone during the meeting? You're not allowed to use the phone. You know what I mean? How bad do I want this? I'm 9-hour difference away in a different country. I conned some Brits to jimmy rig a phone line next to the British bar and tap in illegally. This is okay, there's no statute of limitations. I tapped in illegally to a U.S. Air Force base on a morale call, and because I was a U.S. service member, so at the time the operator answered, it was now legal, just the process wasn't. So, yeah, morale call, and then it would go to the L.A. Air Force Base, and then it would go to the Los Angeles Midnight Mission, and then it would go to the old man's office, and he would answer the phone, and he would hand me the phone. He would talk to me for a second. He would hand the phone to the next person in sobriety, and in order of sobriety, would go all the way down to my sponsor, Frank. And then he would say something stupid to me, because he was a Vietnam vet, and he would say, keep your powder dry. And I'm like, Spons, this is not the jungles of Vietnam. This is Bosnia. It's cold. And I figured out a way to call my sponsor with a 3-second delay on the other end. You know, I could not stand it when I came home after all that and heard some whiny little newcomer, I haven't been able to call my sponsor in a couple of days because I don't know where my phone is. You know, I used to score, I used to steal, I used to rob, cheat, and steal to get what I wanted, right? Am I the only one who ever did something like that? When I wanted something, I figured out a way to do it. I did. That's my truth. So I put that same character defect and flipped it and turned it into an asset. The same energy, my whole attitude and outlook upon life had to change. I had to take a set of different contrary actions that made no sense to me in the beginning. And I've learned how to live comfortably with unresolved problems in my sobriety. I have not become pure as a white Durban soul. The best I've gotten is human. Anyone who knows me well knows that the best I've become is human. Hopefully I'm a good father. Hopefully I'm a good son. Hopefully I'm a good brother. Hopefully I'm a good husband. Hopefully I'm a better friend. And if anything, tonight I hope that I'm a good example of Alcoholics Anonymous and that it works in spite of me. And I want to thank you for having me tonight, and thank Polly for giving me a drink because nobody got me any water.
Let's thank our speaker once again.